Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Young with Optrics Engineering, and with me I have Sean Sturby, our Technical Services Manager. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Scott.
This is another edition of the Optrics Insider. We have 4 topics to cover today. The first one is Dell BiosConnect has a vulnerability. CVS, the popular pharmacy chain in the US, has a health leak with 1 billion records. Western Digital's MyBook has a remote factory reset, and we're going to finish off with Zero Trust. Let's start with Dell BiosConnect vulnerability.
So Dell BiosConnect is actually a utility that comes on Dell desktops that allows you to do a platform update. So update the BIOS and update the UEFI firmware. Now, what's been reported is that the way that it verifies that it is getting the update properly from Dell support site seems to be broken. It's not a huge issue, but because it requires a man in the middle, but the existing Dell BiosConnect firmware, the utility that goes out and does this update, it looks to validate the certificate of the server that's sending it. That's a good thing. Unfortunately, it will accept any wildcard certificate that has a trusted root. So it's verifying that somebody has a certificate. It might not be Dell's certificate. So they mentioned, and I've heard numbers anywhere from 30 to 130 million systems that are vulnerable to this. They recommend manually updating the BIOS if you have one of the affected systems, because you can't trust that somebody isn't doing a man in the middle on you and is trying to get a misconfigured version or a malware-laden version of the BIOS or UEFI firmware. Bit of a aside here on this. It used to be that the BIOS, the basic input-output system on a computer, that's the piece of computer code responsible for when the computer wakes up saying, do I have all of my arms and legs and various different peripherals? Do I understand how they all fit together? Yes. Do some basic health checks. Do I have a hard drive? Can I talk to all my memory? Those kinds of things. It used to be burned into an actual physical chip and was very small. When UEFI, Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, came along, it is effectively another miniature operating system. So that is what is being updated with the BIOS platform security, or Dell's client security update. It replaces the BIOS and does a lot more things. I know on servers I've used it before, where you go into the BIOS and tell the BIOS, hey, please do an update on all of the server hardware, all of the various network and hard drive cards that are in the system and the BIOS and the management platform. And it goes out and it just happily updates it. It has to have a lot more functionality to be able to do that. So Dell recommends, and they have a huge list of systems that are vulnerable, make sure that you either manually update it, or you could also disable the BIOS update platform on those systems. Just completely uninstall it, and then you would have to manually do it. Probably not going to happen in larger organizations.
Interesting. Anything else on that?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about CVS, the popular pharmacy chain in the US. Had a health leak with 1 billion records. That's not good.
Well, just clarify, it was CVS Health had a 1 billion record leak. So it's when they look at the records, it's not actually the health records that leaked. It was the web shopping cart records. So 1 billion records. Things that were included are things like add to cart, configuration, order, remove from cart, search, visitor ID, session ID, device information. So cart, that tells you how important or how valuable your surfing habits are to these large corporations. that they had literally 1 billion records on what people are doing when they are shopping online.
Interesting that didn't include, well, hopefully it didn't include any health care information.
No, but you could, if somebody keeps adding a certain type of product to their cart or checks out and purchases product XYZ that only is needed when they have, say, an insulin dependency, then now you know that they have a problem with diabetes.
Yeah, that's that health information. It seems potentially innocuous, but obviously it's important to someone. Now, to obviously we do a lot of things online, whether it be banking, whether it be ordering your prescriptions, etc. online. In terms of safe surfing habits, I know one product that we use to protect our desktops is F-Secure, and they have a browser protection. Anytime it sees that you're going to a banking site, it'll basically, it looks like it freezes out what happens on the other sites until you've exited out of the your session with your bank. What other things can people do to protect themselves online? And would that even have made a difference with this leak?
It wouldn't have made a difference with this. So, the standard things, make sure that your computer and your browser are up to date, that you have an up-to-date antivirus, anti-malware solution in place so that as you go to these different sites, just being cognizant of the sites that you're going to. You don't want to be buying stuff off of, Little Ted's Bait Shop. If you've never ever heard of Little Ted's Bait Shop, and it looks like it was built in 1990. Okay. In this case, these records appear to be the web server side. So your browser has to make a connection to the server to say, hey, can you display this web page? I'm interested in looking or searching for X. Well, that information all gets sent to the servers running the website. And that's what looks like the records that were leaked this time, is the ones that were actually maintained or held on the server.
Is this where an web application firewall would have helped? I'm assuming CVS would have one, but if you have a web server serving websites, what is the best way to protect that?
Yes, having some additional layers of protection. Web application firewall, as you stated. In this case, it looks like somebody said, here's a year's worth of our web server logs, or however long it was, and we need to mine it for additional details, or we're going to send it off to a third party for them to mine it for additional details. And they made those logs available and didn't secure it. So it's, here's all of our private and confidential information, and we're just going to put it in the dumpster out back and not put a lock on it. Well, no, you want to secure it. You don't want it transported in a dumpster. You want to have it go through a secure shredding facility. And once this information is used, do you still need to keep it? People tend to be data hoarders.
Right. Just to do one final dive in, what you're saying then is there were some logs that were presented on the internal server that somebody was able to act. How are they able to get at it?
It was a non-password protected database that was discovered by a security researcher. They immediately told CVS, and CVS said that it was a third-party provider that was doing something for them that had inadvertently exposed the data, and the access was restricted that same day. So we don't know how long it was available before the security researcher discovered it and disclosed it properly. It was just out there on the web. If you had the URL to it, it appeared.
That's interesting. So I guess the good news is then it was more in terms of leak. It wasn't actually leaked to like a hacking group. It was more a bit less a security researcher. So we'll assume that they're a white hat. found this vulnerability, let CVS know, they fixed it right away.
Correct.
Okay, so that's not as bad, but that's good that the security research pointed it out. And that's also, just to finish this one up, good that when you have third parties helping you out, just to, I'm sure there is NDAs and contracts that you sign to make sure that everything is done securely.
Yeah, and this one was, as we said, a big 1 billion record of information, and a lot of companies are reporting it as health records that were leaked. It's not health records, but it's still valuable data.
Exactly. Okay, interesting. Western Digital, MyBook, remote factory reset. Okay, what happened there?
So the Western Digital MyBook Live and MyBook Live Duo are network attached backup hard drives. So we talk about network attached storage, something like a QNAP, where you put multiple hard drives into this little unit. The MyBook ones are just a smaller version of that. They're designed to sit on your network at home so that you can say, okay, my laptop, I'm going to back it up to this MyBook, or, I take all of the pictures off my camera. I don't want them on just one computer. I want them available everywhere. I'm going to put them on the MyBook. And it acts like a centralized file server.
It's basically, okay, so for those who aren't familiar with QNAP, it's an external hard drive. There are Drobos that also have multiple hard drives that mirror each other to make the data safe. So this is a Western Digital's version.
Correct.
Okay.
So recently, people on the Western Digital community have been reporting that it appears that their devices have been wiped. They're coming up as if they are fresh from the factory. There's no data on them. Something has happened. And if you've had this for a while, then you could have a ton of information on there. You're counting for years back, your tax records, all of your baby pictures from your first 5 years of your kid's life, very valuable information, and then it's all gone. So this highlights a couple of things. One of them is that these MyBook Live and Duo devices, they're able to do something called universal plug and play, UPnP, which is a way of communicating with your firewall at home and saying, I want to be reachable from the internet. So it's a automated way, and if people don't know about it, they don't know that this place that they're storing all of their valuable data is also reachable on their internet connection. So that was the first thing, and then it appears that there was a vulnerability in the firmware on these devices where somebody on the internet has figured out a way to send the factory reset command without actually logging in or being authorized. So that's what's happening. Now they are saying that the firmware was last updated in 2015, I believe. So these are older devices. They're still working, but they are, A, you don't want them exposed directly on the internet, and B, you want to make sure that they're up to date as much as possible. And C, just because you have all your data on a device like this, and it sounds like the Live Duo actually has 2 hard drives, so they're mirrored, doesn't mean that your data is actually backed up. It might be redundantly saved, but it's not a true offsite backup. So get a second one, copy everything from one to the other using something like RoboCopy, and then disconnect it.
Disconnect it, put it in a safe, take it to
a friend's place.
Take it to work. Interesting.
Yeah. Some people are reporting that they are able to use some hard drive recovery software on these devices and get their data back, but Western Digital is still investigating.
Yeah, that's where you break into cold sweats potentially when you say, hey, everything's backed up, and then blank hard drive.
Yeah, the agony of delete.
The agony, that's a good one. And also, yeah, that's a strange one. Okay, anything left on that?
That's it.
Okay, our final topic is zero trust.
So that's a term that I've been hearing a lot in the industry over the last little while, mainly because the White House has issued a brief or presidential executive order to improve the nation's cybersecurity. And in Section 3A, it talks about that all of the government departments need to advance toward a zero trust architecture. So what is zero trust? Currently, or typically, most organizations, they put a firewall up between the office and the internet, and that is the hard shell. And then the inside of the network is the soft center. And it's pretty common for people to say, okay, if you're inside the network, we trust you. So zero trust is no trust for you. It doesn't matter where you are or what device you are. It has to be verified and authenticated. So the principles are verify explicitly, use least privilege, and assume breaches. So even if you are, you bring your laptop to the office, you plug it down on the Wi-Fi, before you get access to anything, even the internet, your laptop has to be verified. You have to be verified. The integrity of the operating system on that laptop has to be verified. And then you get access to just the things that you absolutely need.
It's an interesting concept because we've seen a rise with phishing attacks, and they're going after that one person or people in the office who are going to click a link they shouldn't, and that unknowingly releases a virus or Trojan or malware into the office, and that just wreaks havoc.
Ransomware.
Could be ransomware, exactly. I take it then that this is one way to help reduce that, and there's tools out there also that like I think WatchGuard's Panda keeps an eye on what's going on in the network, and if something doesn't smell right, then it's able to isolate where the problem is, because it also talks to the WatchGuard firewall, for example. And some of these other antivirus, they don't go based on signatures, they go based on more or less known baseline behavior, and then if something happens that's not right, they use AI to kind of figure things out, which follows along that path. So
for example, in our office, there's a group of people in the admin department that need access to the accounting data.
Right.
If somebody in the sales department who has their own separate content management system or customer management system all of a sudden is trying to access that data, that should be blocked.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Well, it's unfortunate that the zero trust seems to be the route to go, but yeah, the hackers are becoming more and more, incredibly sophisticated. So this is, I guess, a way to fix it.
And that's what they do is if they get access to one system, then they use that as a foothold to pivot onto all of the other systems.
Right. And even with working from home, that adds another layer of complexity. And there, I was watching, and I think I posted it to one of the more previous videos, Christian Slater's latest, The Wolf, and it focused on issues with phishing and social engineering and people working from home, and also the fact that you're sharing your laptop with your kids who might not pay attention to the same level, and they just want to play their game, and if something pops up, they'll just press it to make it go away. Meanwhile, you've unleashed he or she has knowingly unleashed a virus that completely takes everybody out. So it's certainly a scary world out there.
Yeah, I remember that actually happening with one of our coworkers 10 years or so ago. Helped them set up a laptop, and I strongly suggested that they set up an account for themselves, an account for administering the laptop, and an account for their kids and or guests. And about a week later, they came back and they said, yeah, so my kid said, hey, we can't install game XYZ. And she went, yes, you're right. And was very happy.
Yeah, and that's also a good point, that all the users base level permissions, they can't install anything without passing it by you, and you're good at quizzing, why do you need this, even if it's a software update, like we had to do today actually for accounting software. But it's good to have that sit on your hands before you do anything, and double check things. So excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Sean, for those topics. One thing I'd like to just mention is, if security is a concern for you, we have access to a lot of different vendors. We have a lot of expertise in this area. Sean, certainly you do. You're working with clients all the time, and this is something that, if it's a concern for you, we'd love to talk to you. Go to optrics.com and you can fill out a contact form, or if you're already a client of ours, you know how to get in touch with us. But we would love to talk to you. info@optrics.com also is our email address. Thanks, Sean. Any final comments, or shall we finish it there?
That sounds good.
Okay, great. Thanks again. Our 4 topics today was Dell BiosConnect has a vulnerability, CVS Health had 1 billion records leak, but not really. It was more a security researcher pointed it out to them, and they got that fixed right away. Western Digital MyBook had a factory reset. Interesting that the last time it had been firmware had been updated was 2015. So yes, they are old products. And then zero trust within your network. As always, if you have a question, comment, or concern, please leave them in whichever way you are listening to this. We'd love to see that. And share, like, and subscribe. Thank you for your time. We'll see you again. Bye for now.
Bye.